Alright, what's up guys? It's Wombat again, and today we're going to be doing a review on this Beyblade. It's called the Banana, but its real name is Maximum Garuda 8 Flow Flugel. It was released as the prize of Random Booster 7, and it continued the annoying trend of prize parts and random boosters being overpowered and making them also super expensive to get. So you'll see this isn't the original color. It actually was released in a random layer collection later on. And I didn't buy that either, but Kevo, the putty god, was nice enough to sell me his second red MG after he was done using it for his banana versus banana battles. So up first is the layer. It's still the widest layer in existence. It's almost a perfect circle. There's like one small bump on the bottom that's pretty unnoticeable. It doesn't really have any effect. It's basically a perfect circle, so it's super hard to burst. Its size, it's technically super hard to burst because of that. Its size also makes it hard to KO because it's hard if it's something this big inside the penalty pocket. But the way that Takara Tomy balanced this out is by giving it basically one tooth and then a pretty shallow Hasbro slope afterward. And this makes it easy enough to burst that it can be pretty much used in-game. However, people discovered a modification that changing the God chip to one that was super tight. I actually have a video about testing that. I can link you that in the description. But finding a God chip that's super tight makes it a lot more difficult to burst. It's already got great stamina and good defense just because it is a perfect circle, basically. That this made it too overpowered. And then you could also use a driver with a tight spring. Orbit generally has, like, naturally, because of the free spinning ball, a high burst resistance. But if you have an orbit with a tight spring, it becomes pretty tough. I don't have an orbit that strong because I never found it to be that much of a problem. But so, and it was banned actually, I think in, I want to say mid to late October of 2017, then unbanned February 2018, and then rebanned again in May of 2018. So it shares the distinction with Omega in the limited format of being the only part to be banned, unbanned, and then rebanned. If Gravity gets rebanned, it might also do that. I can see that possibly happening later this year, but who knows. But still, it's a pretty good layer. It might get unbanned in the future, although at that point it will probably be too easy to burst that it won't be worth using. Personally, between Spriggan Requiem, Garuda G3, which is the Hasbro version of Maximum Garuda, it's a lot more difficult to burst than MG is. And this is the easiest one to beat out of them. But the reason it was unbanned in 2015 was because Spriggan Requiem was one of the counters. And when Spriggan Requiem got banned, this had to go too, because there wasn't enough things that could beat it reliably anymore outside of attack. But yeah, basically the combos you could use this in were Maximum Garuda, 7 Cross, Atomic, Orbit, or Yielding. Atomic was the first one to use, which people just naturally put the best stamina driver on the best stamina layer. And then Orbit was used because they found out it could outspin opposite spin things well enough without Atomic, and Orbit gave it the extra burst defense it needed. And then Yielding is kind of like another Orbit. It's significantly weaker to smash attack and being destabilized because it is a cone shape compared to Orbit, which is a ball. But it's, at least in my case, it's a lot harder to burst with my Yielding because my Yielding has a pretty tight spring, or my Orbit might just be pretty loose. but who knows? Yeah, hard to say if it's like worth buying now because it's banned, and by the time it gets unbanned, it'll probably be useless. But it might be worth a pickup. I don't know. Then the disc is 8 flow. 8 is known for being the disc with the worst burst resistance out of all the God discs because it has all the outward weight distribution, but I've actually been liking it a lot for winning Valkyrie and Bloody Longinus for attack types because the Super Z layers are so heavy that they don't have to worry about self-bursting as much, and they can use 8 to take advantage of the outward weight distribution and get more speed without having to worry about bursting as much. But aside from that, 7 and 0 were definitely preferred over 8 because 7 has comparable stamina. I think 0 is slightly worse, but they're both harder to burst than 8 is. And flow is the frame, probably the most forgotten frame. Like if someone asked me to list frames, flow would definitely be the last one I ever list. It's kind of like reach or vortex, but actually something I actually had KJ test a while ago was flow's just raw stamina. It's obviously not too good for life after death because of the spiky shape compared to something like cross. But I actually tested, I had him test flow versus glaive for just raw stamina, and flow won, which is interesting, but like in most cases you're going to want the life after death anyways, and I think cross also beat it in same spin for stamina. So overall just a kind of an outclassed frame, but it did have like an interesting use at some point. And then Flugel is the driver. It's basically survive with these downforce wings on it. Aside from adding maybe like 0.5 grams worth of weight at most, the wings don't really do anything, so it's basically just survive. Survives outclassed by a lot of things at this point, so Flugel's honestly not too useful of a driver anymore. Except outclassed by like revolve, yielding, even something like Euro, bearing. But yeah, honestly, the random booster release of Maximum Garuda is probably not worth a purchase just because you can get the layer by itself in the random layer collection. And since it is banned at the moment, it might not even be worth purchasing at all because it'll probably be useless once it gets unbanned. And honestly, there's almost no situation where I would rather pick this over Garuda G3, the Hasbro version. So you would only need, I guess, unless I wanted to use yielding, because Hasbro currently doesn't have a yielding, but overall I would honestly skip MG and get G3 instead. So I think up next is either Galaxy Zeus or Seek Excalibur or something like that. So I will see you guys then.